بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed. So today inshallah we will go over the applications of al-umur bil-maqasidiha, or matters. All matters are judged by their intentions. All matters are judged by their intentions. Maqasid is the plural of maqsad, and maqsad means intention or objective. This is the first qaida, the first comprehensive major legal maxim, one of the 5 comprehensive major legal maxims that you should have memorized by now. Should have memorized by now. The 5 major legal maxims. If you haven't, go back home and try to memorize them. Because we repeated them like about 1,014 times. So what we said with every qaida, what we were going to do, where are we now? We are in this second section. The first section was about the introductions. The second section is about the major ones. The third section will be about the minor ones. And the last section will be about al-Fiqhiyya, which are the controllers or regulators or the maxims that are limited to one chapter. If a maxim operates only within one chapter, within a narrow scope, that's called the dabit, not a qaida per se, a regulator, not a maxim per se. So we are in the second section. We're going over the 5 major legal maxims, and we're doing the first one. And we said with every one of them, we will go over the clarification, which is basically to discuss the meaning of the maxim, the justification, which is to talk about the evidence for this maxim, the guidelines and benefits, which is to understand how we can use the maxim and apply it, and finally, the subsidiary maxims, the branches, the subsidiary maxims, and the different applications. Of course, we've mentioned some of the applications of this maxim when we were talking about clarification, because part of clarification is to give examples, and we've mentioned several applications. But now we will go over the subsidiary maxims that belong under that major maxim. 5 main subsidiary maxims, and under some of them there are subsidiary maxims. So, but the 5 main ones that I chose for you are لا ثواب إلا بنية, and then you could also add ولا عقاب. So you could either say لا ثواب إلا بنية, and ثواب means both reward and punishment, by the way. But if you want to be more explicit or clear, you can say لا ثواب ولا عقاب إلا بنية. There is no reward, nor is there punishment without intention. Okay, the second one, العبرة في العقود للمقاصد والمعاني لا للألفاظ والمباني. So the second one would translate as, and I try as much as I can to keep the, because when you translate something, you could have like a different translation every time. So I try to be consistent within the book so that you don't get these things confused. So consideration in contracts is given to intentions and meanings, not words and forms. Consideration in contracts, العبرة في العقود للمقاصد والمعاني, is given to intentions and meanings, not words and forms. And then the third qaida is الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد, which would translate to the means take on the rulings of the objectives. And when we go over this qaida, we will discuss in detail the Islamic ethical system, which I was talking about it yesterday, and I said it's divinely prescribed moral utilitarianism. How is this different from the ends justify the means? That will be discussed when we address this. الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد, the means take on the rulings of the objectives. How is that different in Islam from the ends justify the means? That will be discussed inshallah when we address this qaida. Then اللفظ على نية اللافظ, which I translated here to the meaning of words depends on the intention of the speaker. The meaning of words depends on the intention of the speaker. And finally, al-kitab kal-khitab, which means written communication is treated like verbal communication. Written communication is treated like verbal communication. There will be different qawa'id, subsidiary, below, under each one of these, not each one of them, but under some of these, there will be other qawa'id that we will address. For example, the second qaida, al-ibra fi al-uqud, we will also discuss al-asbab wa al-dawa'i lil-uqud wa tabarru'at mu'tabara, which means what? It means the causes and motives for contracts and donations are considered. So here they are telling you that what matters is intentions and meanings, not words and forms in the aqd. And we will come to the explanation. Conflict with what? Al-kitab kal-khitab? No, al-kitab kal-khitab does not conflict with this at all. This means that written communication is like verbal communication. So when you write something, it's like you said it. Because ultimately what matters is not the wording, but the meaning and the intent. And so when you express your intent in writing, it's like you're expressing your intent in wording. That will be part of the discussion. Because someone may say, what does that mean? Like if, like you can come back and say, I didn't mean it. Like, so this is part of the discussion of this qaida, al-ibra fi al-uqud lil-maqasid wal-ma'ani, which is consideration in contracts is given to intentions and meanings. We will discuss this. We will discuss also how this operates in the case of dispute, because you could have your own intention, I have my own intention, and then like whose intention matters, between the two transactors, the buyer and the seller, for instance. So we will come to this discussion. But then when we talk about al-ibra fi al-uqud lil-maqasid wal-ma'ani, we're trying to discover the intent. We're trying to discover the intent. And sometimes you need help discovering the intent. That is why we say al-asbab wa al-dawa'i. العقود معتبرة، العقود والتبرعات معتبرة. الأسباب والدواعي. Asbab are the causes and الدواعي are the motives. So the causes and the motives are considered. So we will be attempting to discover the intent in various ways, including the causes and motives. So if you're having a fight with your wife and you say to her, you're taliq, and then you come back and say, I meant you're released from your shackles. Oh, no, I mean, that's not the context. What ما الذي هيجك على قول ما قلت? What prompted you? What sort of triggered you, provoked you to say what you've said? You were having a dispute. You were not basically having like breakfast. And so anyway. Now, الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد, for instance, this قاعدة الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد. Under this قاعدة, we will address two other ones that are very important and that will make a huge difference. One of them is ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب, which we translated as what's necessary to fulfill an obligation is obligatory. What is necessary to fulfill an obligation is obligatory. Another one is ما حرم سدا للذريعة قد يباح للمصلحة الراجحة, which is what was prohibited to block the means to evil may be permitted for a greater benefit. These are very important, but also dangerous concepts, because it depends on who's operating, the vehicle, who's driving. When it comes to the industry of fatwa, it depends to a great extent on the driver and the intent of the driver and the sincerity of the driver and the knowledge of the driver and their background in the Sharia. So between the two ends, which is ifrat and tafrit, between strictness and laxity, it's a very wide scope, and everybody claims to be moderate. I claim to be moderate, you claim to be moderate, but who's really moderate? That requires two things. Requires tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is given to those who are sincere, and it requires knowledge. It does require knowledge. It's not only about tawfiq, and it is not only knowledge. It requires the two things, so that you could avoid failures in intent and failures in judgment. People who are not sincere, they will have failures of intent. They will have different motives. They may not even be aware of their suboptimal motives or their evil motives. They may not be aware. And that is الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. Those who are misguided and they think that they are good doers, that they are doing well. So anyway, these are things that we need to have a good understanding of, so that we can, know how to approach our deen. Now, مقاصد اللفظ على نية اللافظ, which is this قاعدة, مقاصد اللفظ على نية اللافظ, or the meaning of words depends on the intention of the speaker. Under this, we will discuss three different maxims. One of them is هل اليمين على نية الحالف أو المستحلف? Is the oath based on the intention of the swearer or the one requesting the oath? So, if you basically make an oath in front of someone, whose intention matters here? The one who's requesting the oath, I ask you, swear that this or on this or that. And then you make the oath, but you make it in a sort of a equivocal wording. Does your intent matter here, or my, request? I want you to swear on a particular thing, but you made an equivocal oath. Whose intent matters here? And then we will talk about النية تعمم الخاص وتخصص العام بغير خلاف فيهما وهل تقيد المطلق. So this is like a Hanbali phrasing, because it's, in the Hanbali madhab, the intention generalizes the specific and specifies the general, but does it qualify the absolute? We will come to the details of this. And then دلالة الأحوال تختلف بها دلالة الأقوال, which is the interpretation of statements changes based on the context in which they are made. So the intention of the statements differs based on the context, the circumstances. And finally, this particular qaida, which says written communication is treated like verbal communication. In addition to this, we say والإشارة المعهودة من الأخرس كالبيان, which would translate to and the established gestures of a mute person are considered equivalent to verbal expression. The established gestures. So if you speak sign language, and we know what type of sign language you speak, it's American Sign Language, for instance, and so it's established. Established meaning it's not any gesture, it's an established gesture. So we know this is American Sign Language, and you speak in American Sign Language, then we will treat this as if you're speaking English. Like it will be treated like verbal communication if it is established. So these are the major, well, they're not major, they're subsidiary, but these are the major subsidiary maxims that fall under al-umur bimaqasidiha. And if you have any other ones that you want to add, let me know. Really, it's just like a sincere request. If you find in any other madhab maxims that we should add, let me know, because the issue here is they may be relevant to our Hanbali madhab, so we can add them, or they may be somewhat relevant, and we can show how they sometimes apply and sometimes don't apply, or they may be irrelevant, and we can basically point out that they are irrelevant. They are irrelevant in the Hanbali madhab. We don't act on them, those maxims or subsidiary maxims. Most of the time, that's not the case. As I told you before, the fuqaha largely agree on all the maxims. Agree on all the maxims. Largely will qualify this statement. And then, but the most of the disagreement will come into the application of the different maxims and exclusions, istithna'at from the different maxims. Now, let us go over the first subsidiary maxim. لا ثواب ولا عقاب إلا بنية. There is no reward or punishment without a niyya, without intention. No reward or punishment without intention. Certainly, Allah is fair, and if you don't have any particular intention, you will not be rewarded or punished. You will only be rewarded or punished based on what you have intended, what you have meant. So when you do things mistakenly, absent-mindedly, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive that, will pardon that, as established in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, this particular siyagha, لا ثواب ولا عقاب إلا بنية, sometimes is used as an alternative formulation for the major legal maxims, particularly by the Hanafis, because it applies to them. It's more congruent with their principles and their applications. So they use that formulation in place of al-umur bimaqasidiha. They say لا ثواب ولا عقاب إلا بنية. And it's it's قاعدة مضطردة. The word مضطردة is often found in مضطردة. مضطردة means what? Consistent. It always applies. It's a consistent قاعدة مضطردة. It always applies. ولا يشغب على ذلك, and it doesn't cause any problem, or it doesn't basically take away from the اضطراد of this قاعدة or the consistency of this قاعدة. That some people, because of their complete devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their good deeds have become second nature. Their good deeds have become second nature. So they do good and righteousness, all the time, even absent-mindedly. It's just like automatic thing. It's second nature for them to do good deeds and to be kind, to be dutiful, and they don't even think about it. They don't even think about it. So they're not having a specific niyyah here. Like if you see like a cat stuck, for instance, in somewhere, and you run to save it, you may not bring in the niyyah into your heart. But will you get rewarded for that or not? You get rewarded for that. And they actually addressed this because they wanted to be consistent. How are you getting rewarded if you don't have any intention here? This is an act that is spontaneous, that's not based on any intention of taqarrub lillah azza wa jal, or drawn closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Keep in mind that they all agree that if you're able to bring the intention into your heart every time you do something, that is more complete and that is more perfect. But if you وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ فَسَوْفَ نُؤْتِيهِ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. And whoever does this, so لا خير في كثير من نجواهم إلا من أمر بصدقة أو معروف أو إصلاح بين الناس. لا خير في كثير من نجواهم إلا من أمر بصدقة أو معروف أو إصلاح بين الناس. there is no good in much of their secret conversations. There is no good in much of their secret conversations, except he who, enjoins others to sadaqah, charity, ma'roof, that which is good, or islah bayn al-nas, reconciliation between people. Reconciliation between people. So, Shaykh al-Sa'di, rahimahullah, and which is people sometimes who have transparency, they are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them that insight. So he says in his tafsir, لا خير في كثير من نجواهم إلا. So this means that this is khair even without niyyah, because there is an exception here. So this means that this is automatically khair. This is like, if you ordain that which is good, if you encourage people to sadaqah, it is automatically considered khair. Anytime you ordain that which is good, you basically encourage people to give sadaqah, you reconcile between people. Every time you do this, then it is khair. Then it is goodness. It is goodness. But at the end of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَن يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ فَسَوْفَ نُؤْتِيهِ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Whoever does this to seek the pleasure of Allah, we will give them a great reward. So in order for you to get the great reward and the complete reward, you want to be mindful of why you're doing this. Mindful that you're doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you do it and you're not mindful that you're doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will go under what? Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. So my prayer and my sacrificial offerings, my life and my deaths, are lillah rabbil alameen, are all for Allah. This is what you basically sign for, subscribe to when you say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. You're part of this league now. You're part of this sort of fraternity of people who can, who proclaim this. You're proclaiming this, just by accepting Islam or converting to Islam, you're proclaiming this. Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. La sharika lahu wa bidhalika umirtu wa ana awwalul muslimin. So here, let's read this. Abu Sulaiman al-Darani said, and this is I am reporting this from Ibn Rajab. So Ibn Rajab stated, the only room for speculation is if the person does a good deed without a sound or corrupt intention. He just does a good deed. There is no intention. Not a good intention, not a bad intention, no intention. Without a sound or corrupt intention. He says, Abu Sulaiman ad-Darani, he's one of the heart doctors, said, whoever does a good deed without a specific intention, the intention of choosing Islam over other religions suffices for them. The intention of choosing Islam over other religions suffices for them. The apparent meaning of this statement, that's Ibn Rajab speaking, rahimahullah, the apparent meaning of this statement is that such a person will be rewarded for the deed without any specific intention at all. For their choice of Islam implies a general inclination toward good deeds, and thus they are rewarded for every good deed they do by that intention, that general intention. And Allah knows best. Okay, so this is clear, but like I said, it's recommended for you, and that's what the predecessors used to do. When they were invited to good, even Salat al-Janaza or anything, they would, it's the great pause. The great pause is before you do anything, figure out why you are doing. the why is the most important question, right? The why comes before the how and the what. The why is the most important question, why you are doing it. Okay, now let's move on to the second one. And the second one, the first one is the easiest and the shortest. The second one is certainly the largest. Although, from here on, all of them will be a little bit more sort of complicated than the first one. But the second one is al-ibra fil uqud, al-ibra, consideration or what matters, fil uqud, in contracts, li al-maqasid wal-ma'ani, al-maqasid, plural of maqsad, and maqsad means intention or objective, ma'ani means meanings, la, not, lil alfaz, not al-ibra or the consideration of intention is given to maqasid al-ma'ani, not to alfaz, which means words, and mabani, al-mabani. Mabani means forms. Words are forms. Okay, now this is a very important maxim, and you will find that there is a little bit of controversy about this maxim. We said before they largely agree over all the maxims. Well, let's say why we said largely. The Shafi'is don't go by this. Although they don't contest much of it when it comes to, like, really, do you mean that words matter more than intents? The Shafi'is want to say, what are you talking about here? You're talking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perceives things or how Allah judges things. Allah is all aware and we don't need to worry about it. I am worried about the judge. I am worried about me as a judge. When people come to me, is consideration given to intents and meanings, or consideration is given to words and forms? I am more concerned about words and forms because that is what I can know. That is what I can know. But let us see how the Jumhur, the majority, will validate their qaida that no, it should be given to intents and meanings, and we're aware of what you're saying, but we're not saying that we have like basically a heart reader that can figure out intents, but we will try to figure out the intent. Sometimes you don't need to figure out. Sometimes you're not even in a position of a qadi to begin with. You are a mufti, not a qadi, and someone comes to you and says, I made an oath and said such and such, and intended such and such. You're not a qadi to begin with. There is no dispute. The guy just made an oath, and he wants to ask you of the consequences of this oath. So you can ask him, what did you intend? You're not a qadi, you're just a mufti. And then you give him the answer based on his intention. And also, if you're a qadi, you will be exercising extra effort to discover the intent. Not that you have a heart reader, that you could look into hearts and figure out intents, but you want to discover the intent. Sometimes the intent can be discovered through circumstances. So, sometimes it can be discovered from the muhayyij, or the thing that triggered that statement, or triggered that contract, or context, etc. So you're working as a qadi here not to read into people's hearts, but from sort of circumstances and whatever causes and circumstances, you're working hard to discover the intent of people. So this expression is by the Hanafis and the Malikis. This very expression is by the Hanafis and the Malikis, and it applies to us because even though we're not right there with the Hanafis and Malikis, like if the Hanafis and Malikis are here and the Shafi'is are here, we're here. So we're between the Hanafis and Malikis. but much closer to the Hanafis and Malikis than we are to the Shafi'is. And here are some statements from the Imams of the Madhab to show this. Ibn Muflih, rahimahullah, and that is Muhammad ibn Muflih, different from Ibrahim. Muhammad is the direct student of Imam Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, and Imam Muhammad ibn Muflih is the author of the great book of al-Furu', and this is basically the repository of all the positions in the madhab. Okay, so he said, المقاصد عندنا في العقود معتبرة. المقاصد عندنا في العقود معتبرة, which translates to intentions are considered in contracts in our madhab. Intentions are considered in contracts in our madhab. Now, who was like the Hanafis and Malikis, or even more than the Hanafis and Malikis in this regard? Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah. He was even more than the Hanafis and Malikis in this regard, defended this concept in great detail, and we will come to some of his statements. So he says, العقود تصح بكل ما دل على مقصودها من قول أو فعل. Contracts are valid by anything that indicates their purpose, whether by speech or action, whether by speech or action. He also said, and this is like a wider expression or a more inclusive expression, he said, المقاصد والاعتقادات معتبرة في التصرفات والعادات كما هي معتبرة في التقربات والعبادات. Which would translate to intentions and beliefs. المقاصد والاعتقادات are considered in legal conducts. تصرفات is legal conducts. Whenever you see تصرف, the word تصرف, it means legal conduct, not just any action, but legally consequential action. تصرفات والعادات and customs, just as much as they are considered in acts of devotion and acts of worship. So thereby, this expression encompasses contracts and customs. Contracts and customs. So he gives priority to intents and meanings in customs and contracts. Now, let's go over Ibn Rajab's, and as we said, Qawa'id al-Rajabiyya, or the Qawa'id of Ibn Rajab, is the closest book we have to in the madhab, the closest classical book we have in the madhab to a book of Qawa'id, because we haven't really been that good at authoring in the discipline of Qawa'id. But Ibn Rajab's book, and Ibn Rajab is an 8th century scholar, 8th century scholar. So Ibn Rajab's book, he was born in the 8th century. Ibn Rajab's book is, and he was the student of whom? Ibn al-Qayyim. So Ibn Rajab's book is the closest thing we have to al-Qawaaid, therefore we will rely on it a lot. So let us read this qaida from Ibn Rajab because it's pertinent. He says al-Qaida al-Ashira, or the 10th maxim. الألفاظ المعتبرة في العبادات والمعاملات, the words that are considered in acts of worship and transactions. He starts by saying, among them are those where both wording and meaning are considered, such as the Quran, whose wording and meaning are miraculous. Hence, a translation cannot serve as a substitute for the original. فلا تجوز الترجمة عنه بلغة أخرى. فلا تجوز الترجمة عنه بلغة أخرى. Some people could read this and say, Ibn Rajab is saying it's haram to translate the Quran. فلا تجوز الترجمة عنه بلغة أخرى. But pay attention to عنه, which means as a substitute. So a tarjama would not be a substitute. A tarjama would not be Quran. But in our madhab, it's recommended to translate the Quran. It clearly says in Matalib Uli Nuha that يحسن ترجمة القرآن ولا يكون بذلك قرآنا, يعني فقط ترجمة معانيه. So they say in Matalib Uli Nuha that it is recommended to translate the Quran, but it does not become a Quran when it is translated. It's only a tafsir. It is like tafsir of the Quran. It's the sort of interpretation of the meanings of the Quran. But certainly, the Quran's power lies in only eloquence or the strength of meanings. And at the end of the day, which one is more powerful? The meanings of the Quran or the eloquence of the language? The meanings of the Quran is more miraculous, more powerful, more important than the eloquence. Yet, because it is the exact word of God, we do not consider a translation to be Quran. That's why people say tarjamat ma'ani al-Quran, the translation of the meanings of the Quran, not tarjamat al-Quran, the translation of the meanings of the Quran. Okay, so that's the first thing. So the tarjama is not a substitute for the Quran. What does he mean by this? It doesn't count. Like you can't recite al-Fatiha in English in your salah. And we will talk about this, this particular discussion is relevant to us. We live in America, we may be able to speak Arabic. Everybody is encouraged to learn some Arabic, but Arabs are 20% of Muslims, right? About 20% of Muslims. The rest of the Muslims are not native Arabic speakers, although many Muslims speak Arabic, particularly people who are, so the mashayikh, if you're like a sheikh from India or Indonesia or Senegal, or you will likely speak Arabic. If you're a scholar from those places, you will be speaking Arabic. Therefore, it is the language that connects sort of the scholars from all communities, and they write in Arabic and so on. But do people need to speak Arabic to become Muslim? Of course not. So the recent sort of whatever, I don't know, some brother by the name of Omar Johnson has left Islam recently just because of this. Dr. Omar Johnson. Yeah. It's not recent? He was explaining why he left Islam. Okay, but he made it clear. I mean, under the whole sort of discussion was about this. So he made it clear that he left Islam because it sort of deifies Arab culture and language and stuff like this. And like he clearly said, like, why do I need to speak Arabic or something like this, like to follow a religion? So, so this is a pertinent discussion. Certainly, he did not need to speak Arabic, of course. 80% of the Muslims don't speak it, and nobody ever doubted their Islam. Although people are encouraged to learn it, because if you receive a message from like God in a particular language, you would be encouraged to learn it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have communicated with humanity in one language at the end of the day. So Allah did not communicate to humanity the last divine message in English or French. He chose Arabic for the last divine communication, which makes it recommended to basically learn it, so that you could read the message that came from God, as it came. But is it required? Of course not. Nobody ever said it is required. And you could basically live your entire life, not knowing except al-Fatiha. And so according to our madhab, which is basically strict in this regard, you need to know Allahu Akbar, al-Fatiha, Sami'a Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana laka alhamd, Allahumma ighfir li, and at-tashahhud. Okay, so And then we will come to say, zawajtuka, or, in our madhab also, but we will come to this discussion later. But this is basically all you need to learn. Allahu Akbar, al-Fatiha, sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana lakal hamd, Rabbi ighfir li, Rabbi ighfir li, and al-tashahhud. Taslim, yes, you'll say, Assalamu alaikum, okay. You add taslim to this. Now, how long will it take you to learn this? Well, I mean, it depends, but for the average person, it would take 2 hours. I think it would take 2 hours for the average person, right? That's it. That's all you need to learn in Arabic. So he says that you can't substitute for the Quran by learning another language. So which Quran would you need to learn? Al-Fatiha, and that's it. Because that is what you need for your prayer, to be valid. Keep in mind that this is according to us, but it's not according to the rest of the madhahib. So for the Hanafis, even Allahu Akbar can be said in any language. The only thing that must be said in Arabic is al-Fatiha. Al-Fatiha. They even had some disagreement over this at some point, but they then came back to agree that al-Fatiha, Al-Imam Abu Hanifa and Al-Imams Abu Yusuf and Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, they had a little disagreement over this at some point, but then eventually they came back to agree that al-Fatiha must be recited in Arabic. But they also agreed that Allahu Akbar can be said in any language, in any language. Okay. So according to some scholars, the only thing you will need to learn is al-Fatiha. How long will it take you? I mean, you're talking about submission to God. You're talking about accepting a new religion, not changing a job. Like if you change jobs, you will probably, like if you start a new job, you'll probably have like 2 days of orientation where, it's just like 12 hours, 24 hours, sometimes more. Forget about the fact that you have studied for 12 years and then 4 years in college, and maybe now, college degrees are worthless, so you need to do a master's or something, and or something more to just get the job. And then to get oriented, you spend about 12 hours at least just for orientation. If you are a physician, you will have to learn how to use the sort of the EMR, the electronic medical record. You'll have to, and you change jobs, it's a different electronic medical record. And you spend a couple of days trying to learn the new, we're talking about, a religion, the last divine communication. And basically to accept that last divine communication and to comply with the rules, you just need to learn Fatiha in Arabic, and that's it. And that would take from a person of average intelligence about 1 hour. I haven't tried it, so if I'm not saying the truth, correct me. But I think, I guess, I presume it takes about 1 hour to memorize it. But even if it takes like half a day, that's still not a problem. Now, Imam Ibn Rajab says, وَمِنْهَا مَا يُعْتَبَرُ مَعْنَاهُ دُونَ لَفْظِهِ كَأَلْفَاظ عَقْدِ الْبَيْعِ وَغَيْرِهِ مِنَ الْعُقُودِ وَأَلْفَاظِ الطَّلَاقِ. So here, the Quran, we're very adamant that wording, you can't substitute for the wording of the Quran. That is if you want to pray. But if you want to learn about the Quran and you read the translation, you could learn the meanings of the Quran by reading the translation of the Quran. But the Quran in prayer, when you say, I recited the Quran, you need to recite it in Arabic. Learning is completely the different story. You know, to reflect and tadabbur and all of this is good, all of this is reward worthy, all of this is great. And I would say that reciting without tadabbur is insufficient. But reciting the Quran has to happen in Arabic to get the reward of qira'at al-Quran, the recitation of the Quran. And certainly in prayer, it would not be valid without reciting al-Fatiha in Arabic. Okay, but then he said that some things, among them are those where only the meaning is considered, not the wording, such as the wording in contracts of sale and others, as well as that of divorce. So financial transactions, the wording does not matter for us, the Hanbalis. Wording does not matter. You could just, whatever. And that is why we said that we agree with the قاعدة العبرة في العقود للمقاصد والمعاني لا للألفاظ والمباني. Consideration is given to intentions and meanings, not words and forms. Yes, we are saying that in financial transactions, words don't matter. You know, so express your intent in whichever way you want. And also in divorce. Why did he say in divorce and not say marital transactions? Because in marriage, it's different in the Hanbali madhab. Different in the Hanbali madhab, and we will come to this difference. Okay. Then he says, ومنها ما يعتبر لفظه مع القدرة عليه دون العجز عنه ويدخل تحت ذلك صور. Among them are those where wording is considered if one is able to use the Arabic wording, able to use the Arabic wording. The Quran, it won't count, you know. Do you have a way out of it? Even with the Quran, yes, and we will come to this discussion. You will have, if you're unable to learn al-Fatiha in Arabic, there is a way out of it. You're still a Muslim. If you're unable to learn al-Fatiha in Arabic, no problem. Unable, no problem. You'll still be a Muslim. And then you will be told how to substitute for this by making dhikr. Okay. So the first thing here among the things where wording is considered, if one is able to use it, but not if incapable, this includes several cases, such as saying the takbir, tasbih, and supplications in prayer, where it is not allowed to translate these if one is able to say them in Arabic. In the case of incapacity, should these fall under the first category and thus be waived? Waived. Or under the second, where one may use their own language. Takbir, tasbih, wa du'a fi salah. Okay, when I said the things that you need to learn in Arabic, I forgot to say Subhan Rabbi al-A'la and Subhan Rabbi al-Azim. Subhan Rabbi al-A'la and Subhan Rabbi al-Azim are things you need to learn in Arabic in our madhab. So, Allahu Akbar. When you say Allahu Akbar, do you have to say Allahu Akbar in Arabic? You have to. According to the Hanbalis, the Malikis, and the Shafi'is, you have to say Allahu Akbar in Arabic. According to the Hanafis, you don't have to say Allahu Akbar in Arabic, even if you know Arabic. Even if you know Arabic, you don't have to. So what if someone cannot say Allahu Akbar in Arabic? Hanbalis and Shafi'is will say translate. Malikis will say waived. Don't translate, it's waived. Get into the prayer without Allahu Akbar. Get into the prayer without Allahu Akbar. Intend to inaugurate your prayer, to start your prayer without Allahu Akbar. It's waived. According to the Malikis, it drops. So what about التسبيح and other adhkar, tasbih and dhikr in general in the prayer? All the dhikr in prayer, let's take the tasbih as a prototype of this. In our madhab, do you have to say it in Arabic? Yes, if you're able to. What if you're unable to? What is the position in the madhab? Waived or translate? Translate. The position in the madhab for the wajib dhikr, translate. The non-wajib dhikr, don't say it, don't do any non-wajib dhikr, but the wajib dhikr, translate. The other position in the madhab is waived, but the dominant position in the madhab, translate for the wajib dhikr. The non-wajib dhikr, drop, but translate. Okay. What about ad-du'a? Supplication. Supplication. Outside of the prayer, nobody questions whether dua should happen nobody asks you to make dua in Arabic. Of course, it's complete, it's better, it's greater when you make the exact dua as the Prophet ﷺ used to make. When you make the dua as of the Quran, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيَّ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَوْمَ يَقُومُ الْحِسَابُ. And all of the du'as of the Quran, greater and more complete. But no one ever said, oh Allah, I want to get married. Well, not me, but so like someone, whatever, just in your language, you could do this. Okay, we're not discussing why the Hanafis there. Well, because we're gonna get like it's a Qawaaid, it's not a fiqh class. So, they just don't feel that it is required. They don't feel it is required. They don't feel it's Quran. So they don't feel it's mu'jiz, meaning it is, miraculous. They don't feel the other adhkar are Quran. So they don't feel that they are miraculous. The Quran is the only miraculous speech that cannot be substituted for to them. But the Jumhur said, the Prophet said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni yusalli, pray as you see me praying, and this applies to all Muslims, and the average person and the sub-average person can learn those few words in Arabic so that eventually, this is, the importance of this is quite clear. The importance of praying in the same language is quite clear. Like people who used to travel, that are halas, who used to journey through the Muslim lands, you could stop by any masjid from China to Morocco. You could travel. Ibn Battuta, when he made his travels, he could stop anywhere he wants, all the way to China, starting from Morocco, all the way to China. You could stop at any masjid, and you say to them, wudu, and they will show you where to. And you stand in line behind the imam, and it will be familiar. Nothing different. As long as we're praying, nothing would be different, and it would be completely familiar. So isn't that important for that concept of one ummah and for that social cohesion within that religious group? And certainly when you have one language, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses for you one language, so that as an ummah, we can communicate through this one language, so that the scholars of this ummah can communicate together, and people are not living in their own compartments, and the scholars, and because they can, that exchange of ideas, and you add brain power when people are able to communicate in one language. So you add brain power. Like someone like me growing up in Egypt, I was able to read Sheikh Abul Hassan Nadwi's books, and benefited greatly. And certainly many other scholars from non-Arab countries. But personally, in my personal experience, Sheikh Abul Hassan Nadwi was one of my favorites. And I was able to read his books because they were written in Arabic, or a good number of them was written in Arabic, and so on. So this is where the beauty comes in, and where the benefit and the wisdom of this comes in. But for the average Muslim, you just need to learn Fatiha. If you want to go Hanafi, you only need to learn the Fatiha. You want to go Hanbali, you need to spend like 2 more hours learning a few more things. Just 2 more hours learning a few more things. So supplication in general, outside of the prayer, do it in whichever language you want. Inside the prayer, what do they say about supplication? So the Malikis say, whatever you want, make it in whatever language you want. The Hanafis say it's disliked in any other language than Arabic. The Shafi'is and Hanbalis say it is not allowed, the Hanbalis say it is not allowed in any other language. It's not allowed in any other language. The Shafi'is and a position within the Hanbali madhab will make the distinction between someone who's able and someone who's unable to speak it, and they will allow translate. Keep in mind that there is another discussion. Before this discussion, there is another discussion. Are you allowed to make any supplication you want in the salah, or you're limited to al-ma'thur, the reported supplications? So the Malikis and Shafi'is say, and this is a minor position in the Hanbali madhab, any supplication you want. The Hanafis and Hanbalis, in the dominant view in the madhab, they say no in salah, because if you leave it open, people will be making ridiculous, supplications in the salah. So let us limit it inside the salah to that which is reported. That's Hanafis and Hanbalis. But likely, the Malikis are right about this. You can make whichever supplications, and that is a minor position in the Hanbali madhab chosen by Imam Ibn Qudama, because the Prophet ﷺ said after tashahhud, tasta'idh billah min arba', and then make whatever supplications you desire. So whatever supplications you desire, whatever comes to your mind, yes. Both. So now, so that is the supplication. Then he said, ومنها خطبة الجمعة لا تصح مع القدرة بغير العربية على الصحيح وتصح مع العجز. Another example is the Friday khutbah, which on the correct view must be delivered in Arabic if one is able, but may be delivered in another language if one is not. Khutbat al-Jum'ah, does it have to be in Arabic? Who are the people that are most adamant about this? The Hanafis. Which madhab is most lenient about this? The Hanafi. Yes. So the people who are most adamant about this are the Hanafis. The madhab that is most lenient about this is the Hanafi. But I'm not making fun of them. They're trying, Jazakumullah khair, they're trying to do their best. But again, at the same time, I believe that then when there is room, when there is concession, we should use this concession. I'm Hanbali, and I'm using the Hanafi madhab here to basically deliver the speech in the language that people comprehend, because it is meant for people to learn something. It's maw'idha, it's exhortation. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَّسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُم. We have not sent a messenger except speaking the language of his people to make things clear for them. So that is what it is, and that's what the khutbah is about. So the khutbah al-Jum'ah, there are 3 different positions when it comes to khutbah al-Jum'ah. One, they say it's a condition to be in Arabic. Must be in Arabic. You see how the Malikis were lenient about supplications? They are strict here. The Malikis say it's a condition. No matter what, it has to be in Arabic. The Hanbalis are also strict here. They say it's a condition to be in Arabic. Then the second position is it's a condition ma'al qudra, but if everybody is, speaks another language, then you may say it in whichever language they speak. And that's the correct position in the Shafi'i madhab, and that is a minor position in our madhab. Okay? Condition. So this would be what? Condition if the congregation speaks Arabic. Would not be a condition if the congregation, if all the congregation does not speak Arabic, then you say it in whatever, you deliver it in whichever language they speak. Now, the last one is recommended, not a condition. It is not a condition, not a condition. And that is the Hanafi position. So most of the contemporary scholars take the Hanafi position now because of this verse. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَّسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُم. Now, to accommodate the other positions, what do I do in my delivery of the Friday khutbah? What do? I include all of the pillars of khutbah al-Jum'ah. I say all the pillars of khutbah al-Jum'ah in Arabic. So I give khutbah al-Haj in Arabic. I say one maw'idha, taqullah, be mindful of God in Arabic. I recite some Quran in Arabic. I send salutations on the Prophet ﷺ in Arabic, and that's it. I'm done. I have done my khutbah in Arabic, but the rest is going to be in the language that the congregation understands. But anyway, it's a matter of controversy. Finally, and I know that I went over time, but I'm just going to finish this so that I finish that excerpt from al-Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyya ibn Rajab. Finally, he said, وَمِنْهَا لَفْظُ النِّكَاحِ يَنْعَقِدُ مَعَ الْعَجْزِ بِغَيْرِ الْعَرَبِيَّةِ وَمَعَ الْقُدْرَةِ عَلَى التَّعَلُّمِ فِيهِ وَجْهَانِ وَمِنْهَا لَفْظُ اللِّعَانِ وَحُكْمُهُ حُكْمُ لَفْظِ النِّكَاحِ. And similarly, the word for marriage, nikah, may be used in a non-Arabic language if one is incapable of using Arabic. And there are 2 views regarding one who can learn Arabic. Does he have to say it in Arabic or not? Lastly, the wording of li'an, a legal oath of accusation, follows the same rule as nikah. And like in the Hanafi position, and that is the position that was chosen by Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah, you say it in whichever language it's understood. What matters here in nikah, and you notice here that they're given nikah a special, because it's al-mithaq al-ghaliz, it's like a very sort of sacred contract. They're treating it as like an act of worship. They're treating it like al-ibadat more than al-mu'amalat because of the sacredness of this contract. So they want the Hanbalis at least, not the Hanafis, not Ibn Taymiyyah, the Hanbalis at least, they want it to be done in Arabic because they're considering it such a sacred contract that it needs to be done um, in the exact words. The final paragraph I will read here. So we notice here the distinction between financial transactions and marital contracts. The later, the marital contracts being closer to acts of worship, even though they are still transactions. Thus, wording carries greater weight in them, but it is waived in cases of incapacity. In another view, chosen by Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah, the meaning is what matters even in the marital contract. So if someone knows Arabic and can say zawajtuka nafsi or ankahtuka, whatever word in Arabic that counts in Arabic, that's beautiful. If not, people don't need to worry about it whatsoever. Whatever language they speak, it will be fine. So hopefully it's this is basically a contentious issue, and it's so sad and so unfortunate that someone would leave Islam just because of an issue like this. But you need to have like a comprehensive understanding of this so that you could ultimately, no one needs to learn the language. You just need to learn al-Fatiha. That's it. It takes 1 hour or 2 hours. If you start a new job, you will take a lot longer in orientation. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت